In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these neat little phone stands. Welcome to David's DIY Reviews. On this channel, we do a lot of little project builds like this, quick wooden builds, DIY tool reviews, and tool tutorials. So if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for a lot more great little videos about content like this. And like I said, today we're going to be making these neat little phone stands, these cell phone holders. And all the dimensions and instructions will be in the description below. So if you're having trouble building it or you want to come back and check out just how I did it, you can check down there. Now let's get into the build. So the material I'm using is just stock poplar. It's 3/4 by 1.5 inches. And the first thing we're going to do is lay out the length. I'm going to make mine 3 inches long. That's a pretty good length for an average cell phone or even a tablet. So we'll just go ahead and mark that and grab our combination square there and draw a line across. So we'll go ahead and cut this off now. And remember, all the dimensions and instructions will be in the description below. So I'm just going to use my regular hand saw to cut this off. If you want, you could use a miter box or a miter saw to make a nice straight cut. But for this little project, I kind of just like using hand tools. It's a little more fun that way. So our next step is going to be laying out the line to cut this in half. And a neat trick actually, if you want to find center of an odd dimensioned piece of material, is if you draw an X through a rectangle, the center is going to be the center, obviously. But this is 1.5 inches, so I'm just going to mark it at 3/4. Draw my line, and that's going to be center. So we'll go ahead and do that with my combination square here, and then we'll go ahead and cut this in half. So now we're going to go ahead and rip this in half. This will be arguably probably the most difficult part, but you're only doing one of these, so just get started really slow, kind of do some back strokes on your saw to get that curve started. And then we'll just rip this right in half. It's not too big of a deal. Once I get going, you'll find it's not too bad. You get that curve started, you get your saw going, and you'll find you can rip right down the center of that piece, not too bad at all. So I'm just getting to the end of my cut here, so just make sure to give it a little bit of support as you get to the end of your cut on this, because if you have this break off or chip off, it's going to ruin the look of your finished product. So just give it some support and finish your cut there. And then if you get a little bit of a burr there, you can just kind of trim it off with a saw or sandpaper later on. So at this point, we've got our two pieces. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and actually give them a sand, because right now it's going to be the best time to sand it all up. Because once you cut those grooves in the front, it's going to be a little more breakable, but not really too bad. But I'm just going to go ahead and sand these pieces up really good right now, pretty much to finished quality. Now how I'm going to go about cutting this groove in here is I'm actually going to clamp both my pieces in my vise. So the front, this is going to be the front edge, the phone will be like this, is flush. And I'm going to mark mine in, I'm going to cut mine in about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to draw that line across both of these, kind of awkwardly with my square here, and I'm going to cut them both at the same time. I'm going to cut that front line, and then I'm going to measure back, and we'll cut that back line of the groove that the phone will sit in. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut that now. So again, this is going to be one of the most important cuts on this project, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start the saw almost straight up and down and just pull it back to start that curve right on that line. And this is where you just want to take your time. I mean, it's not like you're making 100 of these. You're just going to make one set for yourself. So you just get it going nice and slow, nice and easy. And then you can kind of tilt the saw to the angle you want. And we'll start making that cut by just using my hand to support the saw on the other side. And we'll just start making that cut in. To make sure that you're not on an angle either, you want to make sure you're parallel to your piece. And we'll just cut in. We'll cut down about halfway so that it was, you can kind of eyeball it. Like, you can measure all this stuff, but for a one-off project like this, I'm just going to check both sides, and I'm going to run the saw down just as deep as I want, probably about halfway through the thickness of the wood. So that's about like that. And then we'll go ahead and measure the line back and do the other side. So the phone I was setting this up for is about 5/16 of an inch thick. So we're just going to come back 5/16 of an inch, mark it, draw my line across, and we're gonna make that second cut. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And for this second cut, you're gonna be better off to make it too small rather than too big to begin with. If you make this too big, your phone is gonna lean over a lot. If you make it on the small side, you can always cut it bigger. So we'll go ahead and we'll start that second line just the way we did the first one. If your saw kind of slips a bit, don't worry, you can always sand this to make it smooth again. We'll get that saw started, and definitely make sure that your pieces are clamped in your vise really tight so that they don't move around and you get an even cut through both of them. You could have done this and then cut the piece in half. I'd just be worried that if you cut the slot first, when you're ripping this in half, you might break the ends off. That's why I'm cutting this groove in afterwards. So we'll cut that groove down. Once again, we'll just eyeball it. Make sure both sides are down evenly, same as the other cut you made. And then we're gonna use our coping saw, actually, a nice wire coping saw I have, I'll show you, to cut that groove out of there. So I've got this neat little wire blade coping saw, and you can actually put that right down in your slot, and we can just start to cut back towards the second slot. Now if you don't have one of these saws, you could use your hand saw and you could cut down into this and kind of work it away. You could chisel it away. You could use a more traditional coping saw. It'd be a little more difficult, and then file it out, sand it out flat. But this little wired coping saw, man, it works wonders. So we're just gonna go ahead and cut that slot out of there. And like I say, if you're just doing one set of these, take your time, make sure you do a good job. The better you cut, the less sanding you're gonna have to do. So we'll go ahead, we'll cut it right across. And you'll see those will start to pop out just like that. And now we've got our slot. And you can actually use this wired coping saw to kind of smooth out the bottom of this groove. You can kind of work it around in there a little bit, and you'll find that you can kind of smooth out those rough bits. But if that doesn't work for you, you'll have to get in there with sandpaper and a file and finish that up. So that's what we'll do now. So we'll just get in here with our sandpaper, and we'll kind of work away at this. The more sanding you do, as you may know from experience of your own work, the more sanding you do, the better stuff's gonna look. It's kind of the most tedious part of a project, but it's what's gonna make it look good. So we'll go ahead and finish up all the sanding here. So now we've got our two little phone holders that you can use. You can use them together like this. This would be probably more how you would use it with a tablet because it's bigger and you need more support. But you can use them individually like that. You can also actually use them like this, technically. There's all kinds of different ways that these will work. And if you're looking for maybe a different type of phone stand, maybe this isn't the type you're looking for, check out the video on the YouTube card above. I've got a video in there with 3 or 4 different versions of phone stands that I've made in the past. I really like these little cell phone holders. They're a quick build. Like I said, this took about 15 minutes. You could probably do it in 10 minutes. They're really easy. They're a lot of fun. They work really well, really functional. So, you know, you could try it yourself. You could make one as a gift. You could make one for a friend, for your kids. You could maybe make this with your kids. It's a really good starting woodworking project. It's super easy. It's a good way to get in to a nice little build. And like always, guys, new videos every week. Don't forget to miss one. Definitely subscribe to see a lot more great content like this. See you in the next video. David's DIY Reviews.